Hello and welcome to After Hours 41. It's our first YouTube premiere. What does that mean for you? Well, nothing in terms of content. We'll be doing our usual demonstrations, talking about all things Apple and much more. The only difference is going to be, if you're watching at the very second YouTube makes this video live, we'll be on our way back from a hopefully very enjoyable gala dinner. Usually, if we can't make a live show on a Friday, we either move it to a Saturday or skip that week. But this time, taking a different approach. We've created a YouTube premiere. If you usually watch after the live broadcast, we have a lot of people with us in Australia and New Zealand, and it's not the best time for them. They're usually asleep. So if you usually watch after the live broadcast, then there'll be no difference at all. So let's get on with it. What do we have for you? We're going to do a bit of a welcome. So if it's your first time with us, we'll get you up to speed on what we do. Then we've got the week at MacBites headquarters, which is possibly going to be a smidgen challenging, given that today is the 14th of September. But the video's going out on the 20th. So it'll be predictions about next week, basically. Then we've got some freebies. Then we're talking a little bit about Catalina. That is the latest macOS, and it should be with us sometime in October. Then there's something called, I think it's Saka. Could be Saka, but I think it's Saka browser extension. I've threatened to do this for several weeks, haven't I, Mike?
You have.
And what happened was, it was in my running order in Notion. Forgot to put the slide in Keynote, never happened. Easily done. Then we've got Mike, who's talking something new in Excel. New's good, isn't it, Mike?
New's definitely good.
We like new, and this is very new. Very, very new. So new, not everybody might have it, but more on that later. And then I'm doing a session preparing for print in Affinity Publisher. Heard from a lot of you that you're okay moving things about on the screen, but how does that translate to actually getting something out of the door in the end? And then we have an unboxing, and it's going to be a live unboxing, or at least it's going to be a live unboxing for us, of something I'm quite excited about. So let's get on with it. So welcome if you have never been with us before. What on earth is an After Hours? Well, it was born out of the MacBites podcast, and like MacBites, it's very similar to MacBites, but live and on video. What could go wrong? Well, what's MacBites then? Well, MacBites is a podcast that takes an irreverent look at all things Apple. You might not think so from those posters, but the irreverent part's there, isn't it? But we do actually discuss very high-level technical stuff, don't we, all about Mac. That's the podcast. That's an audio-only show. So After Hours is like that, but obviously you're watching, so there's video to it. And we do tips, tricks, demos, tutorials, unboxings, and culinary delights. You're wondering about that one, aren't you? We always say goodnight at the end of the night when we're live and ask what people are going to have to eat, because we say we're going off to get something to eat. So we share what we have. Are we going to share what we've got today, Mike? Because it's a bit of an odd time, isn't it?
Grapes and strawberries.
Ooh. Quite nice, that. We sometimes have pictures of that as well. But that's by the by. The main thrust of an After Hours is getting you up to speed on the tech that you care about. That's what we do. So, starting off with the week at MacBites headquarters. Well, as I've said, today, 14th of September. But as far as you're concerned, it's the 20th of September. Which means, if all has gone to plan, it's iPhone Day. Yes, we have ordered. So it's at this stage, on the 14th, it's fingers crossed. Hopefully by this time on the 20th, it'll be in our sticky little paws. Let us know what you've ordered. Have you ordered anything, or are you waiting for next year? Did you go Pro? Did you go Standard? We need to know these things. So that's probably about all I can predict. But I can also predict that if it's 9 o'clock UK time on Friday, we should now be live. First YouTube premiere. So let's get on with the actual content. We're starting off with freebies. Now, I can't tell you with this one what will actually be free, but I can tell you that every week we always look at what Creative Market have to give us. Every week at creativemarket.com/free-goods, they give us 6 freebies. They range from fonts to Procreate stamps to Photoshop stuff, maybe mock-ups, individual images, presentations both in Keynote format and PowerPoint format, anything like that. So I don't know what this week's will be because they don't announce them till a Monday. But whatever it is, they'll be available at that link and they'll be worth having. We may use some of them in a demo in the future. But I also wanted to provide something that's not time-based. So a freebie that's there all the time and fits in nicely with our culinary delights. Food photos. I find you can never have enough very, very nice food photos. And there is a site on the web that has the most amazing quality food photos. It's a free stock site, but it's dedicated to only food photos. In fact, they take it a little bit further than that and they call themselves foodies. So we're talking very high quality images of food. We're not talking slinging a tomato in a pan. Oh no. We're talking about putting it in a pan and lining it up with its brethren and surrounding it with asparagus and whatever the other stuff is. Is that kale?
Kale, yes.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it is kale, you know. It's not quite... Well, maybe it's kale, but not curly kale. When I have kale, it's curly kale. All tastes like cardboard, but never mind.
It's something green.
It's green. They've got everything. They've got mains, they've got starters, they've got desserts, they've even got gin. So can't say fairer than that, can you? You can get all of these beautiful photos for free at foodiesfeed.com. Now, you will need an account. In fact, that's not strictly true. You don't actually need an account. You can download any of them full quality without an account. But the first one you download will download virtually instantly. Subsequent ones that you download in the same session take a little bit longer. So each image that you download takes a little bit longer than the one before. So if you've downloaded like 10, 20 images, by the time you're on number 20, you're waiting 10 minutes for it to download. If you have an account, they download instantly and the account is free of charge. So definitely, definitely worth a look at. Now, the next thing that we're moving on to is Catalina. Catalina is on the way. Strangely, in the Apple event, we weren't given a release date. Now, this could be good news. How could this be good news, Mike?
No idea.
Ah, I do.
Do tell.
I will share with you why this could be good news. Good news from our perspective. It could be good news because we need a release date for Catalina. We could do with seeing more of Catalina, couldn't we? They did demonstrate a little bit at WWDC, but you know, it's a full upgrade as far as Apple are concerned, and it would make sense to roll Craig out to do a little bit of a demo of it. We also haven't got a date for the Mac Pro. I don't believe we've got a date for the new monitor. So I'm thinking another event. An October event is what I'm thinking. Because the way it's looking, if this was going to be with us in the next 2 to 2.5 weeks, we'd have a date for it by now. All we have is sometime in October. So it would make sense to me there is a possibility there will be another event. If there is, Catalina is definitely going to be discussed. Why is that important? Well, we cover that live. We would have a live chat show. We would go live on audio on MacBites.fm, which we didn't mention in the welcome, but that's our radio station. MacBites, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And we have a chat box underneath it, and we follow events live, which was exactly what we did with this week's event. And it was fabulous, wasn't it, Mike?
It was awesome.
I had a lovely, lovely time chatting with everybody. They got the games demos out of the way early, didn't they?
Frogger.
Oh yes, Frogger.
Frogger.
I had no idea what Frogger was.
Me neither.
Not a gamer. Not a gamer. I need a t-shirt, not a gamer. Anyway, Catalina. Why is it important? Well, it could be a worrying time in terms of whether or not your software will continue to work as expected under a new operating system. Now, sometimes they make fundamental changes to the behind the scenes of an operating system, and stuff stops working. With Catalina, it's bigger than usual, and that's because up to now, 32-bit applications have been supported, as have 64. Moving forward, only 64-bit applications are going to be supported on Catalina. So what you need to know is which applications do you have that are not going to be compatible because they are not 64-bit. And there are two ways that you can ascertain this. The first one is a site called Roaring Apps. It's been around a while. The roaring part of it must have come from, I think it was released around the time of Lion, so the Lion's Roar. And Lion was one of those ones where it was a huge difference under the hood, which meant that lots of stuff broke. And this site came about to solve that problem. So we'll be going in and actually having a look at how you work with that. Now, if you are not a Mac user, don't turn off, because that Roaring Apps site is also there with details of the Windows platform and also iOS. So applications that are on Windows and whether they work with Windows 10, whether they'll still work on Windows 7 and all the rest of that. So I will show you that. Second thing to show you is actually an application. This one is called Go64 and it's from St. Clair Software. Now, St. Clair Software are the people who make Default Folder. When I demonstrated Default Folder about 2 weeks ago, I think. Oh, there was ooze, wasn't there, Mike?
There was ooze.
You learnt lots that you apparently did not know that Default Folder could do, and now you are more in love with it than you were before. Well, it's from those people. It's completely free of charge, which is great, and it does what I guess you could manually do with Roaring Apps. The difference is it does it on your machine and automatically for you. So let's go and have a look at both of those. Let's head off in here. So first thing I need to do is get Firefox up and go there to Roaring Apps. Now, if you've not used Roaring Apps since the last time you needed to do it, it's changed. You used to land on this page and it was only macOS apps back in the day when it was OS 10. Now, it does a lot more now, and because of that, you're faced with this page. And you can scroll down, view the compatibility table. Now, that way it will take you straight through to the compatibility table. It says for Catalina, but actually, if you look across at what you've got here, so let's find something like 1Password7. We all know about 1Password7. So what you're looking at is a list of Mac OS applications, alphabetical, at the moment displaying 10 per page, but you can change that up to 100. So let's take it up to 100 and have it load in more for me. Then what you're looking at is Catalina, Mojave, High Sierra, so the latest 3 operating systems and whether or not these applications run on it or not. Now obviously you're going to need to know what on earth the key is. Well, the key is green if it works fine, so the key's at the top, yellow if it's some problems, and red if it doesn't work. White if there is conflicting data, but you'll notice there's a lot of blue dots. The blue dots mean there is actually no data about that application. Now you may think, well, why would there be no data? There would be no data because this is crowdsourced. So what they really want you to do is to create an application and then give them feedback about your experience with applications. But if we look at 1Password, which was the one that we started with, that works on all 3, Catalina, Mojave and High Sierra. So it goes back 3 versions and it's absolutely fine. So let's scroll down. So there's one there that has some problems on High Sierra, but just does not work on Mojave. So big red dot. So you can either go through the list, but I don't suggest that that is a better way to do it. I think the best way to do it is probably drill down into the applications that you're actually looking for. Now I actually use these 2, a Better Finder Attributes and a Better Finder Renamer. And I know they work on Mojave because I'm on Mojave. But as you look down the Catalina list, most of these have no data. There is a few that do, but they are in the process right now, because even if there was feedback right now, all they could confirm is that it actually works with the beta. and not the final release. So this site will be going crazy with taking in extra information in the lead up, once the Gold Master's released, and then the final version. So it's definitely something to keep coming back to and having a look at. So we've got lots in here that they do work, they don't work. It's actually interesting, Creative Cloud does. But if you drill down into Photoshop, you go backwards like these Adobe Bridge ones here, CS2, that didn't even work on High Sierra, so it's not got much chance. But this one here, CS6, which was the last perpetual license that Adobe created, works on High Sierra. No information about Mojave. The issue with CS6 is going to be, if any of it is 32-bit, it's not going to work. Right, so what you can do is you can actually search for apps in here. So let's go back to the top and do a search. So one thing that I might be interested in is Scrivener. Now you saw how fast that was. Straight into it. That's the application. Works on High Sierra, works on Mojave. No information about Catalina. Now, interestingly, with this one, it just says Scrivener. What version of Scrivener does it mean? Well, you can drill down and get into the application page. That then gives you more information. So they're saying there's no information about Catalina, but it works fine on everything back to Snow Leopard. And then there's a little bit more information, which gives you the status reports and which version of the app they were on. So you can see 3 years ago, version 1 on iOS 10, 2.8 on High Sierra, 2.7 on Sierra, and obviously the latest one here, 3.03 on Mojave. Now, what they don't tell you that I happen to know, and I haven't actually logged in here to tell them about this, version 2 will work on Mojave. It will not work on Catalina. So if you are intending to upgrade to Catalina, your only option would be to upgrade from Scrivener 2 to 3. So that's the kind of decision that you can make once you've got the information that is provided in Roaring Apps. Now, as I said, let's go back a bit up here, and somewhere in here, down the bottom, macOS, which is the one we've looked at, but there's also iOS. So it's the iOS apps. Now, they've actually got the full list, so you would definitely have to search. What should we look for on iOS, Mike, that's iOS only? How about Snapseed? Nothing on Snapseed. What could we put in that there might be something on? Ulysses? Now, Ulysses is saying that the version of Ulysses works with iOS 13. No, it's a blue one, so no data. No data on that one. Doesn't even say it works on iOS 12, which it does. So really, what would be a good idea, if you've tested your stuff and you know, create an account at Roaring Apps and provide information, because that's how it works. It's a little bit like Wikipedia. We all put our information in and then share that with everybody. And now let me go back to the home page, and the last version that we have here is apps for Windows. So if you're a Windows user, or you use Windows in a VM, and you are wondering what on earth you will need, you can come in here and this will tell you. So again, we have 1Password. There is a 1Password for Windows, thankfully. Otherwise, I just would not be able to live on Windows. And lovely. They have taken the time and put the information in there that is working on all of these. No information about Windows, unfortunately. So I think because Roaring Apps started as a Mac crowdsourced information, we need more Windows users to join and provide information. That would be fantastic. But it's always a good starting point, and as we head up to the final release, there'll be updates to this several times a day. So it's definitely a good place to start. Now, the next thing was Go64. Go64. So if I type in Go64, St. Clair Software.
Whilst you're doing that, I'm thinking of upgrading.
Oh, imminently.
To Mojave.
That's Mike. A day late and $1 short as usual. To be honest.
I've given it time to mature.
Oh, I'm liking that. Like a mouldy banana. To be honest, I probably wouldn't have consciously done the Mojave thing. The only reason I did, and Graham will appreciate this, one of our MacBiters, we were both having huge problems trying to get the App Store to upgrade High Sierra without making the system unbootable. It just went into one of its moods. And every time I installed an update, it really scared you. It scared you. You rebooted and it was like, I can't find an operating system. So, you're hyperventilating. In the end, I thought, you know what, I can probably fix this if I just install Mojave. So I did. And actually, it was less grief installing Mojave than it was playing around for all the updates, little tiny point updates that should cause no problem at all, which nearly completely killed the machine. So that's the only reason I upgraded to Mojave. Now, what this is an application that you download. As I said, it's completely free. And it does what you've just seen me do, only it does it a lot faster because it's doing it automatically. Now, what it's saying here is you've probably seen alerts like this one. Now, I certainly have, particularly on the iTV, which is an application that lets me use a hardware device to watch TV on my Mac. And it's firmly 32-bit. So if I update, it just will not work. Because of that, Apple have deigned to show me dialog boxes like that on a random basis, which is very annoying when it's running on a schedule. Because when you see that dialog box, you can't do anything with the application that's showing it to you until you've clicked OK. And obviously, if something's running on a schedule, by definition, I'm not here. So I've been seeing that. Doubtless you've seen that at least once. And that's what this application is going to help you with, to work out what applications are going to need updating or that you might lose because there is literally just no update. So I clicked the download button, downloaded it and installed it. And it's installed on the system. So if I do go 64 and actually run it, that's the first thing you see. So I didn't hit don't remind me again. I thought I'll leave that there. But all it's doing is telling you that Mojave is the last version that will run 32-bit apps. So Apple have used Mojave as a transitional thing to make sure that you're aware. So they've used this 12 months maybe you may have had Mojave installed, or a lot less if you're Mike, like never. Have you seen those messages though, or not?
I don't think I've seen any, no.
No, they must be a Mojave thing, which is very annoying. But it's a transition. So they're letting you know that at the moment, if you've got 32-bit apps that are compatible right now, but won't be, then you'll see this message. So what it's saying here is you'll click the OK button and it'll do a scan of the startup disk. So it isn't going to scan anywhere else, just the startup disk. But you can do other disks if you want to. It then tells you it's going to use Spotlight to do the search. So if you have excluded certain folders from your Spotlight search in the system preferences, you're going to have to go in and make sure that they're available, or this won't have permission to go search them. There's a link to the article from Apple, which tells you all about 32-bit support. So if you want to read that, just click it. Other than that, just click OK. It will go away. Now, it says it's reloaded from the last scan. Right, so click rescan. So while I talk about it, I'm going to do a rescan. I actually ran it, obviously, to see what it came up with before I showed you. Because if it didn't work properly or I wasn't happy with it, then I wouldn't be showing it. But it worked great. Now you can see it loading in. It freaked me out. I thought, just a minute, Camtasia 2019, but that's the latest version. Devon thinks quite an old version. But then I realised in the 64-bit column, which is column 3 from the left, some of them say no, which means it is not going to support it. It's not 64-bit at all. The others had a warning triangle in them. Now, you'll notice at what I'm actually looking at right now, none of them say yes. This is looking very dangerous. That's scary how many apps are not compatible. Like, will I have anything running if I update? I think the short answer to that at this stage is probably not. But I'll scroll down. Some of these, surely. No, it's showing 32-bit only, that's why. If I show all, you'll see I get a different look. And now the ones that absolutely won't work are highlighted in a kind of deep red. Also the warning ones. So I do have some that are okay, thankfully. So close to my heart, all the Affinity apps are fine. Agenda's fine. What have we got from third party? Yep, Airfoil Satellite. That's pretty good, isn't it? The airport utility's okay. Air Server, which I use all the time. So looking through these, there's quite a few that are okay. Now, if you're an Aperture user, that one's going to be a biggie. Apple obviously discontinued Aperture a long time ago, but they did say it would continue to be there if you had bought it and it would continue to work. Until it didn't. Well, that's right now. If you update to Catalina, you're going to lose Aperture. So that may be something that you definitely need to think about. Some things quite surprised me. I don't know about you, Mike, but you see App Delete. App Delete's been around for a long, long time, but it hasn't been updated for at least 3 to 4 years for the very sad reason that the developer died in a car accident. So obviously that's not going to get any updates, but it's still compatible. So that must have been 64-bit way, way, way back. Another one that surprised me was App Zapper, because that doesn't seem to have been updated in years either. App Delete and App Zapper do the same job. They allow you to delete applications, not just by removing the app from your app folder, but also showing you dependencies and other places that that application has installed stuff. But I use both of those, so luckily both of those are available. Some of these things aren't really things that you would interact with directly either. So if you look at these things here, they don't really have an icon. They are within an application. They belong to WebEx. Do you think I'm safe to assume they will just be updated, Mike? Or do you think that'll stop working?
I'd have thought so.
I would have thought they would, but they've had long enough. Why have they not updated it already? So a little bit on the concerning side. But as I go through, I'm getting to, oh, yes. So this is good. But my Camtasias are a bit of a problem. I wouldn't really have expected Camtasia 3 to work at all. That's probably going back to 2016-17. But it's a warning. Now that tells you you've got a problem, but it's not saying it's not 64-bit. So what does it actually mean? Well, I did the logical thing. I clicked on that icon looking for information. I expected a pop-up. I didn't get one, but I did get information at the bottom of the screen, from where I can get more information, and it actually goes quite detailed, telling you what the problem actually is. So it's saying that it is actually a 64-bit application, but some of the internal components are still 32-bit, and therefore it might run, it might not. It even tells you what they actually are. So TSDR, TSC2 and TSCC. Any idea, Mike?
No idea at all.
No, me neither. I'm thinking TS is TechSmith, which is the company who make it. DR, C2, CC? No. I don't know. I would assume TechSmith are onto this, but I don't know how long it will take. It's always a standing joke here at MacBites headquarters, isn't it, Mike? For years and years, we had ScreenFlow, and it was our primary screen recording application. And then the second there was an update to the operating system, it broke, which meant that we had a problem upgrading, because that's our bread and butter. We use that every single day. So if our screen recording software isn't working, we're not upgrading. So at the moment, at least I'm warned that despite the fact they're 64-bit, there is potentially a problem with that. Now, obviously, there is another way for you to check this, which is you could go into your applications folder, you could find Camtasia, the latest version, and you could do a Command and I. And what that would tell you if you're doing it manually is, it should say it's 64-bit. Is it not telling us that? I thought it did. Maybe you have to do some magic at this end. I could have sworn it's shown you at that point if that was 64-bit. Tell you what, Mike, check that for me. I could have sworn it used to tell you that at the bottom. But maybe I'm hallucinating. But if it did, it would tell you in regard to Camtasia, yes, it's 64-bit. But this is going deeper and showing you, yes, it is, but it still might not work properly because you've got internal components that are not 64-bit. So I could have problems with Camtasia. Let's scroll down a lot more. What I found dicey is that stuff from Apple has got problems. So compressor, and that has something in it, the compressor kit bundle, and that is not 64-bit. Apple, come on, get with it. Now what I'm doing is, now another issue here, we have there DevonThink Pro Office, which is now the old version. You can see I've got the version 3, beta 7. I do, but it's the beta. Now, actually, on the 12th of September, the final version was released. I just haven't updated yet. But I can see that my old version, if I wanted to carry on using it, is going to have a problem. How much of a problem? Not sure. Let's have a look. Well, it's the OCR plugin that isn't working. So I'll get more details on that, and it's just the one thing. So actually, the application may work. It's not 64-bit. It's just the internal OCR is 32-bit. Now, this one says yes, and then it is, except for one thing, which is the helper, and the helper is 32-bit. I will run this again when I've got the final release, and we'll see. But what I'm actually looking for, and you can see I've got a lot of applications. We did discuss this as a previous after hours, how many I had, and I think it was 400 and odd. One of the things that's going to be a very sad loss for me is this one, Keyboard Cleaner. I have used Keyboard Cleaner since 2006. Since I got my Mac. What it did, obviously it's less significant these days, but what it did, if you remember back in the day, nobody had a Bluetooth keyboard. It was 2006, what can I say? I had a big chunky Apple keyboard with white keys and the clear plastic back to it. It weighed about 5 stone and it was cabled. If I wanted to clean the keys, did I mention they were white? Attracted crumbs like crazy, that keyboard as well. Then I'd have to unplug it. Well, who wants to go round the back of the table and unplug the thing? Keyboard Cleaner allowed you to activate the application and it turned off access to the keyboard. So you didn't need to unplug it to clean it. You could clean it away, and then to activate your keyboard again, you clicked Command and Q. It worked fabulously. If I still had a wired keyboard, I would still want to use that. But it hasn't been updated since 2006, and I've been surprised it's lasted as long as it has. You're looking at 13 years of an app there. But finally, it's not 64-bit at all, and I'm going to lose it because there is no new version. But I have a Bluetooth keyboard now, so if I want to clean it, I just turn it off. But I'm looking for ScreenFlow because Camtasia's got problems. Look, there's another one. Motion. Apple. Come on. Hello. What else we got? Nicecast I've discussed before. That's going to be our IP. It's not 32-bit, and they no longer support it. They have rolled the functionality of that into Audio Hijack. But at the moment, the most important thing, PQRS, come on, ScreenFlow. Yay! ScreenFlow's all right. It has no dependencies. So ScreenFlow, technically speaking, should work. Now, having said that, it means it will work in terms of it's 64-bit. That does not mean something else won't break it. But what it does mean, in fact, I think that's my latest ScreenFlow. Yes, that one, ScreenFlow 8. But 6 isn't. So if you're running an old version of ScreenFlow, now's the time to think about upgrading if you're going to need that. So that is what this application does at one level. As you've seen, you can show the 32-bit only things you have on your system, of which there's quite a few, isn't there? Look at this lot. You can see the 64-bit applications only, so have a look at what's okay, or you can do all of them.
Did you know?
Did I know?
Did you know there's a 60-bit?
That's a new one.
64-bit version of Keyboard Cleaner.
I didn't. Don't tell me he's finally updated it.
It was updated on the 8th of February last year.
I must have installed it when I first got the thing, and it doesn't check for updates.
Yeah.
Awesome. Mike, put the link for that in the show notes, and I'll actually show them what that does and why it's so important.
I presume it's the same
not
app.
Dead. I hope not. I think the name was Jan.
Yeah, it is, Jan.
Awesome. Oh, that's fantastic. Right, so you can change where you scan. So I've got all my hard drives up there, quite a few of them, and what you look for, whether they're applications or all your executables. Now, you can also in here, so let's say, now let's find one that is actually updatable. Let's go for its 32-bit, like ScreenFlow. You can go in there and you can type a price that would be to upgrade. And you can do it by actually clicking on the link that they provide, which will take you through to the store. So let's go to buy. And let's go to ScreenFlow, and let's assume that we've got version 6. Will they actually let us upload at all? Let's have a look. Sometimes it doesn't even tell you. You've also got options, and that Mike, they're making me think. ScreenFlow Super Pack, ScreenFlow Super Pack and premium support.
Yeah.
Why do I have to pay for support if their app's broken? Don't get me going, it'll be a rant. Okay, that's given me the price, the VAT. Can I upgrade? I have a discount coupon. I don't, but I might have. So maybe I need an upgrade thing that I can put in there. But at the moment, what it's saying is that that's going to be the price. So let's take that price. Now I just want that one there. Awesome. Let's hide that. And I can go in there and put in an upgrade price. So that is that price. And then I can see a total upgrade cost. So if I do that for all of the applications that I need, that's worrying, isn't it? Look at that. It's telling me that that is not 64-bit. No, it is and it isn't. The flash bundle, bless. There's dead technology, just take it out. I think if they just took it out, that would solve a problem. But again, if I wanted to get an upgrade price, I could go out and visit Telestream's site, which is, again, let's go to buy, let's go to Wirecast and get a price for Wirecast. Wirecast is not cheap. Trust me, it is not cheap. Wirecast, in fact, that looks a little bit cheaper, to be honest. I have a subscription for Wirecast. I know, broke the habit of a lifetime with this one. The first version of Wirecast we bought cost about £1,000. This is why I have a subscription to it. It's £99 a year. But if I had an old version of Wirecast, now it didn't like that. It didn't like that because it's pounds. So let's put in £699. This is going to be expensive, isn't it? But I think it's handy that you can do that. You can add these in as and when. So I'm not going to have to pay for that one because that's not on. But I might want to upgrade DevonThink Pro. So let's set that one. The upgrade price for that is £99. Probably plus VAT, not sure. But it totals up for you and it will retain that information. So just a really quick way to be able to do a quick audit on your system and see what on earth is going on when it comes to Catalina, which I think is brilliant. And I'm very impressed with the fact that that's free. However, when I come out to close this, you'll notice they do a little bit of a promo for that other applications. Default folders one I've got. Jettison is brilliant. It ejects your external drives before your Mac goes to sleep. I think I have got App Tamer, but I don't use it that much. And History Hound searches for text on web pages you visited. You have an option to take a look at them later, or you can make a donation. So probably worth helping them out with that, because it would certainly save you time. But I'll say I'll take a look at that later. Okay, so that was Catalina and what's coming. Next thing that we're looking at, and if you're with us and you're in the chat, put your questions in because we could even be there with you right now. This is going to be really weird, isn't it, Mike?
Very.
We'll pretend to be MacBiters. Now, as I've said, it's actually at the moment Saturday, 14th. And we're doing 3 shows today, aren't we?
That's the plan.
I'm hoping to get to bed at some point. But this is the first one of 3 shows that we intend to do today. And it's 25-4. How are United doing, Mike?
Winning 1-0.
Oh! Obviously, Mike will be doing some Excel at some point, but we're trying to get it to line up with half time. Do you know I'm good to you? I really am good to you.
You are.
I am. Right, so let's have a look at the Saka browser extension. As I said, it's something that I've looked at for quite a while, doing a demo of. And it just seems to get disconnected from Notion, where I run everything from. And I get into Keynote, and I've not put a Keynote slide, and I sail past it. But today is the day. It is the most amazing browser. Now, one reason that I haven't covered it from when I first got it is that at that stage, it was Firefox only. And I know a lot more people use Chrome. I had a big row with Chrome and moved to Firefox, never looked back, use it on iOS as well, love Firefox. Never sentences you never thought you'd hear yourself say. Number 1, I love Firefox. But I do. They've worked wonders with it. So I was using it in Firefox, but it is available in Chrome. So let's go and have a look and see what it actually does. So there's my Firefox, and I've got a few tabs open. Let's lose that one, but let's go and get some more tabs open while I explain. So I don't know about you, but when I'm working, I open a tab and then I think, oh, just open another tab. So I might even go to Facebook. This is dangerous. I have no idea what will come up on Facebook because I'm actually logged in. Oh, there's our friends. Oh, there's Bruce. He's having a party. Oh, he's done a selfie there with it turned backwards. So I might have something like Facebook open, might have Twitter open, who knows? But I've got lots and lots and lots of pages open. So let's go to the shows on here as well. So I've got the MacBites homepage, but let's say I've been working on the shows, which I have. If you've not been following along with the shows, I've been backfilling artwork. We didn't used to do artwork for every show. Oh, Mike's bot, that's handy being on the fold, isn't it, Mike? It's all right, it's not loaded in, and I'll go back to the older ones before it does. Right, here we are. Here's some shows. So I've been going through these shows and working backwards, doing posters for them. There's my boy, untethered in Timperley. So I've got content on that page there that I may be working with. You never know. Right, so at this point, I've got quite a few pages open. I might even have done this, where I've got that in a separate page. And from there, I'm not doing the news. I daren't do the news, dare I might. I never know what might have happened with the news. What should we load in? What else have we got? We could load in MacBites Learning. Right, so basically, Saka comes into play when you do like I do and have far too many tabs open for your own good. So I've got this at the front and it's 2 MacBites tabs, but I'm pretty sure I've opened a Facebook tab. But it's not in here. And what could have happened is I could at some point have minimised that Firefox window and started working on this Firefox window and think, well, I must have closed that Facebook page. Now, Saka installs, so let's go have a look at where you get it from. Saka extension Firefox. Just do a search for Saka and then put Firefox or Chrome, depending on which one you want, and it takes you here. And it's from here that you can install it. So there would be an install button there if I didn't already have it installed. Now it gives you a little bit of a blurb about what it's all about. So browser navigation assistant designed to be fast, etc. I would say to you, it is basically Alfred or Launchbar for your browser. So as it says, it can access these things, which is critical to it working. So I'm working on MacBites Learning and I want to get to Facebook, and I'm pretty sure I've got it open somewhere, no idea where. Not unusual for me to have 40 pages open that I'm jiggling with. I'm terrible. Tell you another thing I do. I go to stock sites like Pixabay. So let's say I've put in there book, and I've then got pictures of books. I know I'm terrible. I am terrible. And I would go to other stock sites and make the same search and then can't remember which one had the thing that I'm looking for, because I would be looking for the same thing on all of these sites. And I tend to go for 3. I go for elements and do a search for books. And then I would pick the best one. So I've got those 3 sites open as well. I know I'm terrible. Right, you've got 2 ways to access it. You can actually leave the thing up here and have your icons showing. I only have 2, and the reason that I have these 2, I don't even need them. But for the fact they don't play nicely in Firefox unless the icon's showing. But you also have this overflow thing in here, and Saka is available from in there. But there's a shortcut key for it, and I would suggest learning the shortcut key, which is Option Space. So when I do that, it opens up this, and doesn't it look like Alfred? Only it exists within the browser. Now, I'm looking for Facebook, so I start typing Facebook. It finds it straight away. I click that, and it not only finds the page, but it finds it in a Firefox window that was minimised, and it takes me straight to it. It's a very tiny thing it's doing, but oh boy does it save you time. And the more you get used to using that, the faster everything feels. Believe you me, it does. So in the other one, I had MacBites Learning. So let's try Learning. I don't even need the full word, straight to it. I find that it's a little bit like Alfred. The first time you try a launcher, it feels really awkward. You're trying to find the shortcut key, you're looking at your keyboard, then you've got to look back at the screen. But literally within a couple of hours, you would, as Mike well knows with me and Alfred, I had to upgrade Alfred from version 3 to version 4 about 3 months ago. Obviously, I had to stop Alfred to do that. Then Mike said, can you just look at this for me? And I said, yeah, sure. And I immediately used the Alfred shortcut key to do what he wanted to do. And I was lost, wasn't I? I was like a little kitten. And I said, Mike, I'm sorry, just a minute. I'm going to have to open up. How do I run an app if I've not got Alfred running? And he's like, well, isn't it on the dock? No. The dock has nothing on it because I use a launcher. I had to open up the applications window and navigate within there to open the applications that Mike needed me to open, to do what I needed to do before I went back and finished configuring Alfred. I find with Saka, now I've got that in the browser, just learn that one shortcut key and you can quickly fly around this. Now, that isn't all it can actually do. You'll notice across the top, you have other tabs. So you can go back through ones that you've recently had closed. So a while back, I was looking at this. That was the score after 24 minutes. But luckily for Carl, we just do a quick refresh on that. We've now got something totally different, but basically they won 3-1. There you go. So what that did was open up a page that I had previously closed. So I did that by going into there, which the second tab is recently closed tabs. Then I've got all my bookmarks in there, the third one. I've got my back in time thing. So this is my history, what I've opened and the order that I've opened it in. And can't remember what that one does. Oh, recently viewed. There you go. So you've got all these things to go at. I pretty much work within the tabs and then type in there whatever it is I'm looking for. So if I'm looking for my blog, type it in, boom, straight there. You don't use this, do you? You didn't know what it did. Now you do. Useful?
Yeah.
Going to install it?
Yeah.
Ooh, that's progress. Now I'm showing it you in Firefox, but what I will do is also show it to you in Chrome. It's exactly the same, but I'll show it you anyway. So I'm going to align that one to the right and that one to the left. Don't know if you're aware of this, but I love this. Love this. I can grab a tab from in here and I can take it. No, hang on, it's pulled it out. Hang on. Right, I was going to say, no, that doesn't work. But you might think, well, this is Chrome and this is Firefox on the left. You can't do that. You can if you grab it in the right place. So I actually work with multiple browsers, but I drag and drop between them as if they were the same browser. Just like that. So let's close that one down. Let's get my blog. So all I'm doing this for is so I've got some stuff open. There we go. And I can close that bit down now. So close that. Needless to say, I've got something totally different in Facebook. Never can see the same thing twice in Facebook. Should we go to my feed? Because I've just posted a fabulous picture of Mike. There you go. Look at him there. Look at him, bless him. It was a chocolate challenge, in case you're wondering, but you'll know all about that because although this is 41, we've not done 40 yet. Time shifting, it's confusing me. Right, so I am on my Facebook page. This one a little bit easier, but I'm going to make it more complicated by opening up another window. We'll go to MacBites and we'll randomly pick a show. So let's go in and find a show. Which one should we go for? How about that one? Bravo Sierra and the Science of the Bin collection. Right, so I will go back to the other tab. So I know somewhere I've got that window, that MacBites window open, but where? Same shortcut key, Option tab. Let's look up Science. Hang on. Oh, it didn't find that. Not good. Let's see. Do a MacBites? There you go. You are. Take straight to it, even if it's in another window. It does work in the same window. So let's get all of these together, and we'll go to that one and then try and find Facebook. And even though it's in the same window, boom, straight there. It's by far the fastest way to do it. Now, Chrome doesn't have anything built in to help you do that. Firefox does. But what I've found is, with Firefox, if you go to a tab and start typing, it will show you open tabs in the list that pops up. But it's doing it a different way to Chrome. And what I like about Saka is, it doesn't matter if I'm in Chrome or Firefox, it's the same shortcut doing the same job in exactly the same way. So that's Saka, and it's free of charge. Got to love that. Got to love that. Have been meaning to share that with you guys for so long, and now actually have done. Anyway, Mike, how's the footy doing now?
Same.
The same. Are they heading into half time, or do we have lots of VAR time?
Half time, I think.
It's
Getting
going to
there.
half time.
Getting
Excellent, excellent. Which means I'm handing over to Mike for Excel. Something new in Excel. What could be better than that?
All right, today we're going to talk about xlookup, which is a new function. But before I talk about xlookup, I want to put it into context. And for that, you need to understand VLOOKUP and HLOOKUP. Now, I'm sure some of you have used VLOOKUP, and if you haven't, you've probably heard of it. It's a very good marketing tool for Microsoft. I've got a mug somewhere that says I love VLOOKUP on it.
Did I buy you that?
You did buy me that, yes.
Oh, I'm so cool.
Yes, and along with the other one that says I love spreadsheets.
Yes.
Yeah, which has got a chip in it.
How did you manage that?
I have no idea.
Is that a new feature as well?
It is.
Can you not do that with toys that I bought you, please?
Yeah. So I'm going to cover those first. I'm going to cover VLOOKUP and HLOOKUP first. So I have this this file here, and in this file I have a list, and it is a list of iPhones. You can see the model number, the model, the year, and the cost. You know, very often what I'll want to do, or what you might say to me, is go and check what year that particular model was made, came out. I think we tend to do it more on the iPad, but you can do it on the iPhone as well. So you look on the back of your iPhone or your iPad, find out what the model number is, go Google it. What this will do is this will present you with the information that you need without having to go and Google it. And this is all genuine information as well, not made it up. So the idea is that you have this table of data, which in this case goes from A to D, 3 to about 60, is it 63? But there could be much more data, there could be much less data. And over here in columns H and J, I've got this little panel where you would type into to H3, you would type in the model number, and using formulas in H4, H5 and H6, Excel will give you the year, the model and the cost, instead of you having to manually look down column A, find the model number and then go across and look for the information. Now, to make it a little easier, what I've done in H3 is I've created a drop down list so that you can select the model number, and all those model numbers in that list are picked up from column A. So as you add more items, if you did add more items into column A, they would automatically appear in that list. So as I choose something from this list, it will change the year. And the reason it's changing the year is because in that cell there, H4, I have a VLOOKUP formula. So what Excel is doing is it's saying, go and look at what's in H3, which right now is A1303. Then go up to A4 and look down at column A. The V in VLOOKUP stands for vertical. So it's looking down a column. It's starting at A4 and it's looking down column A. And when you find the matching value, so when you find A1303, stop and go across to the third column. What I mean by that is column A is treated as column 1, column B is treated as column 2, and column C, the year, is treated as column 3. So we're telling Excel, as I say, to scroll down the list, look for the number, which I've just seen it there, 1303, and then go across to the third column, 1, 2, 3, and what's in that cell in the intersection of the row and column is 2009, hence it putting 2009 in there. So that's what a VLOOKUP is used for. VLOOKUP is used to look for a value down a column, and when it finds that value, stop and go across a certain number of columns. And then whatever's in the cell is the answer to the formula. I'll do a similar example to calculate the model and the cost. So the scenario is the same as before. You have a list of model numbers, you select the model number, and you want it to return the model and it to return the cost. To do that, the easiest way is to use VLOOKUP. So in H5, we'll put equals VLOOKUP. As you do with any Excel formula, start with an equal sign, type in the name of the formula, type an open bracket. The VLOOKUP requires 4 parameters, often called arguments, but I think arguments for many people is a bit of a technical term, a bit of a programmer's term, so I tend to call them parameters. So the first parameter is they call the lookup value, which simply means what are you looking for? And we are looking for the model number. Now I could type a model number into that cell, but that would mean I'd have to edit that cell every time I want to look for a different model number. So what I actually want to look for is what's in H3. It is a model number, but it means I can just change what's in H3 and that will feed its way into the formula. Then I stick a comma, which is the separator within the formula to separate the parameters. The table array, again, another word I don't like, a bit too technical, simply means the lookup table. Where are you looking? So we've told Excel what we're looking for. Now we're telling Excel where we're looking. And what most people would say here is we're looking from A4 to A63. That's the range we're looking in, column A. But actually we need to define the table array as these 4 columns, because the table array has to start with a column where the matching value will be found. The matching value, the one that's in H3, that matching value will be found in column A. And we're looking for the year. So the year is in column C. So yes, we could actually, for the VLOOKUP, say A4 to C63. As long as we include the column with the answer in, so column C in this case. But actually it's column B, isn't it? Column B, because we're looking for the model. So yes, we could actually just include up to B63. Then you'd put a comma, and then you'd put 2. And the reason you'd put 2 is because the answer is coming from the second column of the range AB. But what you'll find is most people tend to just include all the columns. You don't have to, as long as the first column, in this case column A, is the one that contains the matching values, and you do include the column that contains the answers. So because we're looking for the model, I could just say H3 to B63, but I'll do the whole lot for consistency. Okay, so HB to D63, and there we go. Then a comma. The column index number, as I said, that is the column number that contains the answer. Now, it's not always column A is 1, column B is 2, column C is 3, etc. It's starting with the first column of the table array. So in this case, it is column A is 1. In this example, it's a 2, as I said, because the answer is coming from the second column. Then another comma. And then finally, the fourth parameter is the word true or the word false. And you specify false if you're looking for an exact match, and true if you're looking for an approximate match. Now, in my experience, 90%, if not more, of VLOOKUPs, you would choose false. There are times when you might be looking for an approximate match, and I have an example to show you so you can see the difference. But in the real world, most times you do a VLOOKUP, it's going to be an exact match. So I will choose false. I'll explain true in a minute. Then close the brackets and enter. And that gives us an iPhone 3GS. Is that right? A1303. It is indeed. iPhone 3GS 2009. We know that's there because I've done that formula. So let's calculate the cost. Very, very similar formula. Equals VLOOKUP. The lookup value is in, again, H3, comma. The table array, I'll use the same table array as before, A4 to D63, comma. The column index number in this case is 4 because it's the cost that we're trying to return, which is coming from the fourth column. And again, it's an exact match. When we say exact match, what we are meaning is we are meaning that the item that we're looking for, which in this case is the model number, has to match exactly one of the values in A4 to A63. Although we've specified A4 to D63 as the table array, it only searches for that value down the first column. And if it can't find that value, it returns an NA, an error. I won't be able to show you an NA here because it has to match one of the items in this list. Although I suppose if I changed that to 1204 or 1304, hang on, where is it? 1304. Let's just undo that. It was 1304, not 1204. So 1304. There we go. We now have NAs because it cannot find that value anywhere in that list. It doesn't matter about case. It's not case sensitive. So if the A in here was capitals, but the A in column A was lowercase, that would be okay. It's the actual spelling, if you like. So let's just undo that. So if I changed the A1303 to A1984, I think that's near the top, there it is. Now it changes the values and reports back the year, the model and the cost of that particular model number. Okay, so that's a standard VLOOKUP, and I've used the false parameter there. Let's have a look at where you would use true. Let me give you an example of that. What I'm working out here is interest on savings. So I have in my savings account, and this isn't real data, I have different interest rates based on the balance in my account. So if I have up to £999.99, then I will earn 1% interest. If I have between £1,000 and £4,999.99, I will earn 2% interest, and so on. If I have 25,000 or more, I will earn 15% interest. So the idea would be I would go to F3 and I would type in a number. So let's say right now I have exactly £5,000 in my bank account. What is the interest on that 5,000? I need a formula to calculate it. I could do that myself. I could look down this list in column A, and when I see the 5,000, I can stop and go across to column C. And that is basically what VLOOKUP is doing. It's automating that. So let's put the VLOOKUP in here. Equals VLOOKUP. The lookup value, what are we looking for? Well, we're looking for whatever is in F3, comma. The table array. The table array is this range here. It has to start with column A because that's the column that's got the values we are looking for. And it has to include column C because that's where the answer is coming from. Comma. Column index number. We are trying to return the interest rate, and that's in the third column of the lookup table. And then finally, I am actually going to put false here deliberately, just so you can see what happens. As it happens right now, it's worked because it's picked up the 5,000 and it's gone across and it's picked up 5% from the third column. But what if I had in there 2000. Now it comes up as an NA. Why? For exactly the same reason as we had before. It can't find an exact match. And we've used the false parameter, and we've told it therefore it has to be an exact match. So let's put the 5000 back and change that false to true. Now when you say true, you're saying that if it finds an exact match, great, use that exact match. But if it can't, then use an approximate match. So in this example, it has found an exact match, and therefore it's giving us the 5%. But what if my balance on my account was 14,990? Instead of giving us an NA, because it can't find that exact value in that list, it's now giving us a value. Is that value correct? Well, let's look at it. If the balance was 14,990, then yes, we would earn 6% interest, because we don't earn 8% interest until our balance hits 15,000. So we have another £10 to go until we have 8%. So yes, it's working, but the definition of using true is approximate match. Well, to me, approximate match means closest to, or the word approximate means closest to. And if you think about it, 14,990 is closer to 15,000, is only 10 off 15,000, than 10,000. So if we take the word approximate at face value, what it actually means, surely that interest rate should be 8%, because the balance is closer to the 15 than it is to the 10. But actually it doesn't work like that. When we say it is an approximate match, what we mean is that the number in here must be not greater than a number here. Let me actually explain what's going on in the background. What Excel does is, first of all, it compares the 14,990 to the first item, and it says, is there an exact match? No. Is the value in F3 greater than 0? Yes. So it moves on to the next one. Is there an exact match? No. Is the value in F3 greater than 1000? Yes. So it moves to the next one. Is the value in F3 equal? Is there an exact match? No. Is the value in F3 greater than 5000? Yes. So it moves to the next one. Checks for an exact match. No, there isn't. Is the value in F3 greater than 10,000? Yes. So it moves to the next one. Is there an exact match? No. Is the value in F3 greater than 15,000? And the answer to that is no. So it stops and it goes back up one. And that is what it uses as the comparison. Therefore, that's why we get the 6%. So, in other words, it is comparing this number here against each one of these. First of all, looking for an exact match. If it finds one, great, that's what it uses. If it doesn't find one, it keeps going until the number is higher than the number that it's looking for, and then it goes back up one row. So a couple of things. If you're using true, which we are, then your lookup table must be sorted based on the data in the first column, which it is. It's in lowest to highest order. If we had text in that first column, then it would have to be A to Z. If we had dates, it would have to be earliest to latest. If you don't sort your lookup table and you use true, you'll get something back, but it's what Microsoft call unpredictable results. So it may look right at first glance. If you don't see an NA, you tend to assume, well, it's right, but it might not be right. So using true because you want an approximate match, make sure your lookup table is sorted based on the first column. If you're using false, if you want to sort your lookup table, you can do. This lookup table, which is this big block here, this is sorted, but it's sorted in descending order on year. If we were using true, we'd have to make sure that the lookup table was sorted alphabetically A to Z on column A, which it isn't. Now, the fourth parameter is actually optional. But be aware that if you miss that out, if you don't put anything in there, then it defaults to true. And as true is the parameter that you're likely to use least, as I said to you before, 90% of the VLOOKUPs I've ever done have always been false, then you could get yourself into a very sticky situation where you've got the wrong results. This actually happened not long ago. Somebody at work sent me a spreadsheet and said, Mike, this doesn't seem to be working. Can you have a look at it for me? So I had a look at his VLOOKUP, and what he'd done is he'd missed that fourth parameter out totally, and it defaults to true, and it should have been false. As soon as I went back and added the false parameter in, it worked. Now, as well as VLOOKUP, there is an HLOOKUP. HLOOKUP tends to be used not as much as VLOOKUP, for the simple reason that, as I said to you before, VLOOKUP is all about looking vertically down a column. So we're looking for this value down a column, and the answer's coming from another column to the right. In this VLOOKUP, we're looking for this value down a column, and the answer that we want is coming from another column to the right. But you might have your spreadsheet set up like this. Let's just make this a little bit smaller so we can see it. You might have your spreadsheet set up like this, the other way around. So those are your lower balances, those are your interest rates, and here we'd therefore be looking for the balance, whatever that balance is, across a row, and the answer is coming from another row underneath. But because people tend to have their spreadsheets set up in columnar format rather than row format, that's why HLOOKUP isn't as commonly used. H stands for horizontal. In fact, I know many people who, when I mention HLOOKUP, have never heard of it. But it works in exactly the same way. It's just a HLOOKUP equals HLOOKUP. We're looking for the value in B10, comma. The table array, so where we're looking, is this range here. It has to start with the items that we're looking for, and it has to include the actual results, comma. The row index number, well, the answer, which is the interest rate, is coming from row 3. This is where people get confused as well, because it says row 6, but it's row 6 of the spreadsheet, but it's the third row of the table array. And then in this case, it's an approximate match. Okay. Now, there are a few problems with VLOOKUP. I mean, it's worked for many, many, many years, but there are problems with it. The result has to come from a column to the right of the lookup values. Or, if it's HLOOKUP, the result has to come from a row below the lookup values. But if we just focus on VLOOKUP, there is the lookup values, column A, and we were looking for the model in here, we were looking for the year in here, we were looking for the cost in here. So the columns that contain the answers must be to the right of the column that you're searching down. So that means that you may have to restructure your lookup table. Also, as I've said a couple of times, VLOOKUP defaults to true. If you don't specify true or false, it defaults to true, which is the approximate match. And 99% of the time, your VLOOKUPs are false. Inserting an extra column into your lookup table, that's going to mess up your formulas. That says $2,018. Now, I know iPhones are expensive, but I don't think we've hit the $2,000 mark yet. But actually, that's because that cell has got 2018 in it. It's actually picking up the year. The cell just happens to be formatted as currency. Model showing as 0 and the year is showing as iPhone XR. That's because it's still referencing the 4th column, the 2nd column, and the 3rd column. So when you insert a column or you insert extra columns, it's going to have a knock-on effect on the formula because it doesn't adjust this number. Let's just delete that column. Or if you decided to move columns around, if you thought actually the year would be better to the left of the model, that again is going to have a knock-on effect. Your formulas will not update. So you'll have to amend them yourself. And that's where xlookup comes in. xlookup is a brand new function. It's designed to replace VLOOKUP and xlookup. Or is it? Is it not just designed to provide a better way of doing it? Because I don't think VLOOKUP and xlookup will ever go away. I don't think they'll ever be deprecated because so many people use them. But it's faster. That's one of the big benefits. It requires less memory and processor power because one of the things with VLOOKUPs and xlookup is they do require a lot of processing power. If you have several thousand VLOOKUPs in a file, you'll probably crash Excel. Happened to somebody last week at work. Now, before you get too excited, xlookup is currently only available to people signed up to the Office Insider program. The Office Insider program gives Office 365 subscribers early access to pre-release builds of the monthly Office update. So think of it as beta testing. What I'm doing here, what I'm going to do here in a minute, is give you a sneak peek of what's to come. Now, before I do that, let me just tell you a little story about updating. Last week, I updated Office on my iMac, and so I've now got the xlookup function available. I went to a cell after I'd done the upload, and I typed equals X, and it appeared. Now, I'm using my Windows machine here, so that's why it's not appeared on here, but equals XL and xlookup appeared as an option in the list. But yeah, if I just carry on this story. So it was there. Then I fired up my Surface to see if there were any updates. And there were. So I clicked Update Now. Office updated to version 1910, and that includes VLOOKUP, xlookup. I did the same on my Windows VM. It said updates available, so I clicked Update Now. And it updated to version 1909, not 1910. The version numbers, by the way, are year month. So 1910 is October this year, 1909 is September this year. So my Surface has updated to October's pre-release, whereas my VM that you're looking at now updated to September's pre-release, which doesn't contain xlookup, as you've just seen. Funny thing was, I was logged into my VM using the same Microsoft ID as on my Surface. So it seems like Surface owners get priority, which I suppose is only fair. When Microsoft will make xlookup available to everyone is anyone's guess. But when they do, it will only be available to Office 365 subscribers and not users of older versions. So what I will do now is I'll minimize this VM, the Windows VM, and I will switch to Excel on the Mac, where I have my file open, this lookup file, and I'll show you using xlookup. Now let me just delete this. Oops, hang on a minute. What's going on here?
You've broken it, haven't you?
I have broken it. No, I haven't. I know I know exactly what I've done. There it is. Yeah. If you want to know what I've done, I took a screenshot for a reason that'll become clear at the end of the demo, and what I just double clicked on was the PNG file.
Do you know what's worse than doing that?
What?
Taking a screenshot with what's that app called?
Snagit.
No. It's another app that takes screen caps. Oh, what's it called? I can see the icon. And basically it takes these screenshots, but it floats them over.
Oh, ScreenFloat.
ScreenFloat was one, but I use another one. But basically the two of them do the same job. They take a screenshot and then float it over the top of all the other windows. So imagine that you've got a dialog box in application number 1. And you need to refer to that while you type up the instructions in application number 2. But as soon as you click application number 2, the dialog box disappears. So you take a screenshot with this ScreenFloat and whatever the other one's called, it will come back to me at some point, and it stays there on the screen. Well, I can't tell you the number of times I've done that, typed up what I want from the dialog box, and then clicked the image to close it and wondered why it's not responding.
That's exactly what I've just done.
It's a neat trick, because there's no Chrome around it. So if you wanted to play with somebody's mind, can I highly recommend that? It's a good wheeze.
It is. Okay, let's go to the xlookup one sheet. This, as you can see, is virtually the same demo as I've just done. I've just got multiple sheets in the file. So I've created my drop-down list again, and I want to calculate, or I want it to tell me what year that particular model came from. But I'm not going to use VLOOKUP, I'm going to use xlookup. So equals xlookup, and xlookup is actually simpler. It might look more complicated there on the autocomplete. You appear to have more parameters, but the last two are optional. And you can tell that because they're in square brackets. But the lookup value, so what are we looking for? Well, we are looking for what's in H3, comma. The lookup array is simply where are we looking. So we are looking in this range here, C4 down to C63, comma. The return array is where the answer is coming from, which in this case is the year, isn't it? So that's in A4 to A63. As I say, the match mode and search mode I'm going to leave for the moment because they are optional. So I'm just going to close the brackets and enter. And we get 2017, which is it 1865, which is correct. xlookup is really what VLOOKUP should have been all along. The ability to just say, look for this in this column, and the answer's coming from this column over here. So we don't have to worry about the model number column being to the left of the year column. We don't have to worry about including the right columns. You just say, I'm looking for this in here, and the answer's coming from this column. I'll show you that again. We'll do it with a model. So again, equals xlookup, we're looking for this model number, we're looking in this range here, comma, and the answer is coming from column B, B4 down to B63. Close brackets, enter, and voila. So is that right? Yes, it is. So let's change the model number, and it changes the year, and it changes the model. Let's have a look at the interest rate example using xlookup. So I'm going to stick 5,000 in there as the balance, and I'm going to put xlookup. The lookup value is F3. The lookup array is this column here, or these cells here. The return array is these here, close the brackets and enter. And we get 5%, which is correct. You'll notice I've not put in the true or false, and it's defaulted to an exact match. Whereas in VLOOKUP, it defaults to an approximate match. As I said earlier, it defaults to true if you don't specify a true false. But if I changed the result, or if I changed the balance to 4,990, now we get an NA. Because it defaults to exact match, because that's what 90% of searches are, and it can't find an exact match, now it's showing an NA. So this is where I'm going to go back, edit the formula, put in a comma, and change the fourth parameter. Now with the fourth parameter, you actually get more options. Exact match is the default, so you don't actually have to specify that. And you can choose now to have an exact match or the next larger item. Now I can't right now think of any example where I might use that, because in most examples where you'd want to use what was the equivalent of true, you would want the next smaller item, because you're not going to earn 8% interest until you've hit the 15,000. If these were not balances on your bank account, but maybe revenue generated by salespeople, and these were the bonus amounts, you're not going to get 10% bonus until you hit 20,000 sales. But there could be times when you want to use exact match or next larger item, so Microsoft have built that in as an option. I think they've taken all the things that users have wanted that were missing from VLOOKUP and HLOOKUP and added them in. But in this case, it's -1, which I can do either by typing or double clicking on the item from the list. And there we go, 2%, which is correct. It should be correct, yeah, because you don't earn 5% until you hit that 5,000. Let's just go and change that. Just change it to a 1. See what happens. Yeah, there we go. Even though I haven't hit the magic 5,000, it's still now picking up the 5%. Okay, so that is another example of xlookup. Let's have a third example, and this is the equivalent of HLOOKUP. So now you don't have to differentiate between VLOOKUP and HLOOKUP. I'll go again and stick a balance of 5,000 in there and put equals xlookup. What are we looking for? We're looking for what's in B10, comma. Where are we looking? So the lookup array, that range there, comma. The return array, that range there. And this time again, we do want the -1 because it's an approximate match. So right now we've got an exact match because that does match one of these items. But if I change that to 4,900, we get 2%. So xlookup works horizontally or vertically. The last example I want to show you is where it can return 2 values at once. So I will stick with the model number, but what I'll do in H4 is I'll put equals xlookup, spelling it correctly, equals xlookup. What we're looking for is the model number, comma. Where are we looking? We're looking in C4 to C63, comma. But for the return array, I'm going to specify 2 columns, A4 to B63. I won't bother with the fourth parameter because we know it's got to be an exact match. And when I press enter, what it does is it actually fills in both cells. Now, when I go to I4, if you go to a cell and you press the delete key on the keyboard, it blanks out the formula, or well, it blanks out whatever's in that cell. But if I go to column I and press the delete key, nothing happens. And if you look in the formula bar up here, it's grey, the formula is grey, but in H it's not. That tells us that although there's a formula in column I, it's really part of the formula in column H. So we have two cells with the same formula, but we've entered that into just column H, and we can't remove it by going to column I. So that is the xlookup formula. Now, one last thing to mention is incompatibility. What happens if someone opens an Excel file containing xlookup and they're using a version that doesn't support the function? Well, the function will be displayed in the formula bar, but it starts with _xlfn dot. Let me show you. I should be able to show you, because if I go back to my Windows virtual machine and I go to xlookup 1, here's one I prepared earlier. So I have an xlookup formula in a cell with using Excel for Windows, which doesn't support it. So what it's doing is, it appears to be correct. It's showing you the correct value in the cell H5, but if you look in the formula bar, it's preceded the formula with _xlfn. That is fine until any calculation takes place in the workbook, whether it be editing something or editing a formula or whatever it is. So if I was to maybe change that to a different model number, it now has done a recalculation across the whole spreadsheet, and we get hash name. What hash name is doing is it's basically saying, I don't recognize the formula. I don't recognize x_xlfn.xlookup, because that is a formula function that's not in this version of Excel. Microsoft's advice: remove the unsupported functions, or if possible, replace the unsupported functions with supported functions. So that's it. That is xlookup, along with vlookup and hlookup. I will pass back to you.
Don't you think it's strange that they haven't, like you just said, you either take it out or replace it, but
Yeah.
they're leaving it to you to replace it?
Yeah.
Could they not interpret it some way, or would that be too difficult? Would they not know what you intended and they couldn't replace it?
Maybe they will. I mean, the page I read was on a Microsoft support site, which was talking about what happens when you see underscore, or what _xlfn means, and that was their advice. Now, maybe they will write something into future functions that will automatically do something.
But if I understood what you did, and I'm no genius with spreadsheets, it's replacing both of them, so you only need the xlookup.
Yeah.
So I don't think it would be very easy for them without duplicating the sheet it's on and doing one with a VLOOKUP and one with a HLOOKUP. And even then, if they did it automatically, it might change the meaning of the spreadsheet.
That's true.
So they're clearly leaving it to you.
Yeah.
I guess that's actually better, because there have been times when there's a mismatch between something in a file. You know, it might be Word, and you can't do that particular highlight, so they change it, and you open it and think, what have they done? I don't know what that is, and I can't read it.
Yeah.
So probably best to walk away, leave it alone. Right. Okay then. Excellent. Excellent.
Yes,
learnt lots there. Right. So let's head back into the next thing, which is preparing for print in Affinity Publisher. Now, I've had lots of calls for this one. Apparently, preparing for print, a daunting task. Now, although we've moved on a little bit since that was state of the art, it's just got more terrifying, hasn't it? The thing with preparing for print is, the biggest issue as far as I'm concerned is you don't want the first time you find the mistake to be when you are holding one of 5,000 copies of something that you have had printed. That to me is the biggest issue. Second issue, there's lots and lots of complicated terms that aren't really to do with computers. They are to do with printing and the printing industry. There's some overlap. I'm sure we all understand ink, and if we're old enough, we might understand dot matrix. But there's so many terms that aren't really on point for people who are the designers. So it's quite conceivable that you've worked with computers for years and you've been doing layout and design for years, but you've maybe done it for the internet and not particularly for print. That's where I've been. I have done things for print occasionally, but they've been relatively straightforward. They've not been the kind of things where I need to think about coatings and special colours and anything like that. They've all been fairly dark text, white background, would print out fine on a laser printer. Except recently. So I thought it was a good idea to have a look at it, but then I mentioned it briefly and got inundated with mails about that's exactly what I need. I've been told I need to CMYK it and I don't know what that means and I don't know how to do this and I don't know how to do that. So that's what we're going to cover. So I am going to work through some of the terms, but I'm going to work through the terms by actually showing you how to deal with that particular term in Affinity Publisher. I'm also going to do it in two ways, because your situation is going to probably be one or other of these approaches. There isn't really a hybrid approach here. Either you are going to be aware that you need to create a file for print at the point that you are creating it, in which case you're setting up a new file from scratch. The only other approach to it is you've got a file that you assumed was maybe going to be a digital version, so it's perfect for PDF. You have now just discovered they love it so much they want it printed, and you've thought, that's not the best idea you've ever had, because it's not optimized for print. So the second approach will be, is there anything you can do with an existing file to convert it, rather than have to start completely from scratch? So that's the approach we're going to take. So let's go and have a look at it. So let's open Affinity Publisher, and hopefully it's having a little think about it. Probably stressing the machine out again. Right, now your layout may vary from mine, obviously. I've tried to keep it fairly straightforward and simple. So I've got my pages, or I will have, on the left-hand side, and I always like to have my layers showing on the right-hand side at a minimum. So if you're starting from scratch, File, New, and then it's a matter of working through the new dialog box, which I have shown before, but I've always shown it in relation to digital output, not printed output. So how does that differ? Do you need to think about anything? Well, the first thing to think about is at the top we have type. If you want to print a document, then you could choose print. And what print is, as opposed to print ready, press ready, it has different settings. So print would be if I want to produce something for in-house printing in A4 with a certain layout. If you wanted it press ready, then you could choose the press ready presets. So I'm going to start from this, but I'm also going to assume here there is no right way in this dialog box. There is the right way for you depending on your print service. But I could sit here and say you always do this and you always do that, and that would be wrong. That would be misleading. How I had to work through this dialog box with my latest job, well, actually I needed to convert it, but if I'd been starting from scratch, I would have done it according to my printer's instructions. So we have a printer who offers via the web service and then sends the final product to us. They have on their website a whole range of instructions, of varying complexity and varying accuracy, I would say, wouldn't you, Mike?
Yes.
So we had fun and games, but would it be a spoiler to say it was all right in the end? We all lived happily ever after. So what I did was I went to the website, screamed and cursed at Mike. We worked through it together, and what we needed to do was fish out of their instructions, which were copious, very detailed for InDesign, very detailed for Illustrator, and for Quark. Mike spoke to them, they'd never heard of Affinity. So it was a bit like having the instructions in Serbo-Croat and trying to convert them into Affinity English. But, as I said, we all lived happily ever after, so it's doable. It's just a matter of interpreting their instructions, which may have different names. So in here, for instance, what do we have? We have page height width. Maybe in a different application, that's called something different. It might be page dimensions, horizontal, vertical. You don't know. It's a matter of looking at the instructions from your print service and interpreting them into this dialog box. So everything I do here is only an example. What you will put in the boxes is going to depend on the instructions from your print service. But I will explain what each one is, and that should help you do that, to do that interpretation. So I've chosen a type of press ready, but it's only a starting point. I will be changing things as we go through. Within the type of press ready, I then need to choose a page preset. Now it could be the page preset you want isn't in there, in which case you would need to choose a custom one. I kept mine simple. I made it A5, so that was the size for me. You can in here create a preset if you need to that is just the page size. So I've shown you before a brochure that I did for the Munich Memorial Service at Old Trafford in February. And that was printed out not with a print service directly that I interacted with. It went through Manchester United and they dealt with the print side of it. So the page preset wasn't quite A5. But for this one, I thought, you know what, let's go simple. A5's half of an A4 and I know exactly what I'm dealing with. And it's almost the same size. But if you do need it precise, then you can create your own preset. The document units is just how you would like the units to be referred to. I'm quite happy with millimetres. As you can see from the width and height, there's 148 millimetres and 210 millimetres. So if I made those centimetres, we'd be working with points anyway. So I keep them to millimetres. Now the next one's an interesting one, image placement policy. Because that's an Affinity thing, now there is a similar functionality in virtually every other DTP package known to mankind. But obviously, with the instructions from the printer probably not being optimised for Affinity, it may be called something totally different. You may have to ask them, do you want the images embedded or linked? I would say embed them. You really want to make sure when everything goes off to the printers that everything's embedded. Now, having said that, at this stage, we're talking about the images being linked and or embedded in the Affinity Publisher file, not the actual file that goes off to the printer, unless you're sending them the Affinity file. Now, let's go back to what I said. Our printer never heard of Affinity. Definitely needs some education, but that's a whole different story. So at this stage, it wouldn't actually make a difference, but for my own sanity, I prefer to have them embedded. That way, I know they're there. Otherwise, what will happen is, if my Affinity file gets separated from my source images, it will open a dialog box and start screaming about not being able to find the images. And I do not ever, ever, ever want that. So I tend to embed them. It's going to depend. Your mileage may vary, depends how many graphics, depends what size. Now, next thing, number of pages. You are not at this stage limiting yourself down the line. It's a starting point you're making here. I happen to know I wanted 8 pages. I think if you're preparing something for print, you'll probably have a shrewd idea at this stage how many pages, because you'll probably have costed the job up. But if not, as I say, can be changed later. Default master is referring to a master page as opposed to content pages. A master page, you can have multiple ones, is the place to put things like headers, footers, page numbers, and any other repeating elements. And what it's suggesting is, would you like me to make you a default one? I'll leave that set to yes, because actually my masters in this particular job are fairly straightforward. And leaving that tick in the box means I will get a master applied to all 8 pages without me having to go through and do it manually. So it saves time. Right, then I come down to the tabs at the bottom and I'm starting with layout. Because I've selected A5, I've got the correct width and height in there. Also have a box for portrait, which again we've talked about before. There is no box for landscape. It's sort of exclusionary. If you take the tick out of portrait, guess what? It's going to be landscape. But for this scenario, I want it to be portrait. The DPI is your dots per inch, and that should be coming from your print service. Now we were told, make sure it's 300. So it's 300. You do have other options. 72, 92, 144, they're usually for screen work. Printing tends to start at 300, and you do have here 400 as an option. But as I said, our printer said 300, so 300 it is. Then you have the option for facing pages. Facing pages is referring to the work inside Affinity Publisher. Again, if what you're providing for your print service is a print-ready PDF, actually it doesn't matter if it's facing pages or not. Not at this stage it doesn't. I'm leaving the tick in it because it makes my life easier. Now what I mean by that is I have done files lately that were not to be printed by a print service. Because of that, I needed to be absolutely certain they would print on a domestic printer. And it was A5 pages that were going to be printed out, 2 A5 pages per 1 A4 page on the printer. How did I know that the pages would be in the right place? Well, with a domestic printer, you never know. The only way to do that is to make sure that in Affinity Publisher, you manually place the pages. That way, madness lies beyond, I would say 4 pages, never mind 8, because you've got to work out which one to back on to which one while you're working with it. And what would happen with that, and what did happen with that, is as I'm working in Affinity Publisher, my page 2 is not next to my page 3, and my page 3 is not next to my page 4. So when it comes to threading the text, it's a nightmare. So what I said to Mike was, right, look, even when we're domestically printing this, we're going to have to be savvier than this, because I can't do 8 pages, 12 pages without losing my sanity if they're not facing pages. So I have enabled facing pages in here for my own convenience in Affinity Publisher. But for my print-ready PDF, it actually makes no difference. So if you want to do it without facing pages, it won't affect your output. I want to see them facing because I want to see an easy way to thread my text from page to page, where page 2 is next to page 3. I do want them arranged horizontally, and I want it to start on the right. You could have that on the left, you could change that from horizontal to vertical, but the default in there makes the most sense. That's tab 1. Next one. Because you've selected print press ready, it automatically has assumed it's going to be CMYK. So it's fixed that for you. That's fine, but what you would need to do is make sure that that is what your print service recommends, CMYK/8. And then you need, that's your colour format, but they should tell you what colour profile to use. Now this one's talking about US web coated SWAT version 2. When I open this up, there's a whole range of them, and this is where it gets complicated. Which one is your print service using? Because it's going to make a difference. Now, what I did during development of mine, because our print service did not tell us that. I don't think we bothered asking, did we, Mike?
No.
We had more to worry about with spot colours, but that's a whole different story. So what I selected was generic CMYK profile, and I worked on that basis until I heard otherwise from the print service. That will enable me to carry on working and worry about the fine-tuning of it later. Next step, margins. Now it defaults to quite wide margins, and these margins are far too wide, in my opinion, for an A5 document. That may work for an A4, but not an A5. So I do want margins included. Margins are the inside edge that I am working to. Margins actually have nothing to do with the print process. So a printer isn't going to interpret the margins. That's for you to work with. They're an indication for you of where you consider the edge of your content to be. You will have content beyond your margin, but it won't be critical content. So think of it in terms of, if you were looking at a TV screen, you have marks when you're doing filming, you have marks on it, crop marks on it. You don't want, say, the titles of your movie to be outside of those safe areas, or the text may be missing. So it's for you, this, rather than the printer. I want inner margins of 10, outer margins of 10, top of 10, but at the bottom I want a little bit more room, so I'll make that 12. Now, there's a button at the bottom to retrieve the margins from the printer. That will do you no good. You will not know what physical printer your print service is going to use, and you certainly won't have it attached to your computer, thus you will not be able to retrieve it. So don't worry about that. Then you've got your bleed area. Now, again, this is going to have to come from your print service. Our print service told us 3mm all the way round. So I put in 3mm all the way round. If they tell you, because if I go in here and I change this, let's say this decide no, we're going to have it 10mm. I've got this lock turned on, and that means they all change together. Unless I want more at the bottom of 12mm, and I turn the lock off. Now, actually, it's 3, and they're all 3, so make sure, put in 3, and they are now all 3. That is as far as you can take it at this stage. Have you specified absolutely everything? No, you've still got options that you will need to configure down the line, but you've done a fairly sterling job to get going with it. So click OK at that point. And that will give you an almost press-ready document. Let's have a look what we've got. We have Master A. This is your master page. So if I were to put some text on here, master page A. Oh, I've lost the ability to type. Master page A. And let's put L for left. We will then copy that over there and put R for right. Now, that master page should already be applied to all of the other pages. So there's a master page A on the right, one on the left, one on the right, and so forth. That's what it means when it says master page. So if you wanted page numbers, this would be the place to put them. How would you do that? Just put a text box wherever you need it, a double click in there to get rid of all of that, go to text, insert, fields, page number. It will show, let's get that middle of the page, no, not there, not there, in the middle of this page. I'm going to zoom in a bit so I can see it, grab hold of it, move it along, and it's now in the middle. And then I would duplicate that over there. So I'm holding down the Option key and moving it into place over there. There we go. And I would lose that. So that's how you would do something like page numbers. As we ripple through, instead of an X, you will see the actual page number. So couldn't be easier to do that. Right, I don't actually need page numbers on what I'm doing, but we'll go back and worry about that shortly. Right, let's have a look at page 1. We do have a page number because it has the Master A applied. It also has blue crosses around that. That's to indicate to you it's on the master and you shouldn't be editing it. The master page shows up in your layers panel as Master A with 2 little boxes on it of art text, which are the actual page numbers. Okay, the orange is indicating that it's a master element, and therefore if you change one it will change them all. But we don't need to be editing that in a content page. It's just showing you that the master is applied. It's really helpful that that master shows up in the layers panel, because it means if on page 1, so we've got just one page there, right, with page 1. If we don't want the page number, but we do want everything else from the master, so let's have a look. Let's put something on the master. Let's put something on both of them. Let's say we had a header going across the top there in our chosen colour. Oh, how lurid can I be? Oh, that green's terrible. How about a nice orange? That's a kind of MacBitesy orange. Right, so let's say we wanted that on our master. It comes through to all of them, which is perfect. Right. But we don't want the page number. Well, instead of creating another master, you can do a little bit of a tweak. You can go into the master settings of page 1. This is not the global master settings. It's how the master is applied to page 1. And you can find this one by selecting it. So that's not the one, that's the one. And turn that off. In fact, it's not letting us do that. It should do. I can fiddle and edit that. Is it this one? Turn that off. There we go. Disappeared. And then I come out of my editing master A linked. And when I go to page 2 and 3, well, not 3 isn't there, but 2 is there. You get the idea. All right, let's go back and put that in. So let's edit linked and go back in and turn that on and finish that. Right. So that's how we edit the master. So just showing you that you can have master content and then choose not to have master content if you don't want it. But I don't particularly want that stripe across the top either. But that's what we've got. So let's get rid of that. Let's lose our page numbers because I don't need that. And what I'm showing you is in here, the blue is the margin. So let's zoom in so we can see we seem to have 3 elements here. We have the blue on the inside, we have the white, and then we have this area outside the white. What's going on? What's what? The blue is the margin. That is 10mm from the top, 10mm from the left. Down the bottom, if you recall, it is 12mm. Now, the white edge, don't disappear, the white edge here is the edge of what is going to be your physical page. So if I was putting something on there, if I wanted to put a graphic on there or something, I would maybe work to there like that. So let's say we have there a nice 2cm, 20mm box, and I just wanted it on that particular page. Not the other pages, just that particular page. That's how you would do it. That goes up to the edge of it. But this bit on the outside is showing you the bleed. Remember the 3mm that we set? That's what it's showing you. So this little box, if I put that right up to the edge of it, what might happen is when it's printed, it goes on the printer, and yes, the printer knows that that's the edge of my page, but if the cut machine is slightly off, what I might end up with is that, with a bit of white showing. It could go the other way, where it cuts off too much. So say it cuts off that, say it cuts off the 3mm off the left. Now it's not square, or it wouldn't look square on my finished product. That's what the bleed's for. So if I absolutely want that box here at the 2cm mark, but I want to make sure there is no cut off around it that looks very dodgy, just pull that out to the edge of the bleed. Anything that's in this area, you are expecting not to see. You are expecting your print service to use the guillotine along that edge. So absolutely do not put anything in it that you expect to be printed. It's superfluous graphics, if you will, to make sure that your finished product is perfect. So it's just there in case. It's a backup for you. Now, that was critical with what I was doing, because I wasn't printing, I wasn't designing to a white page. I was actually designing to a very, very dark page. So how did I go about that? So we've looked at the colour spaces, we looked at the bleed, looked at the margins, looked at the edge of it. Let's have a look. Let's say that what that box actually is somewhere I'm going to put the page number. I'm making a big drama out of the page number. In that case, don't put it on that page, put it on the master. So stick it up there, make sure it's touching the edge of the bleed. No need to go beyond the edge of the bleed. The bleed actually gives you a kind of ring-fenced area to extend into that's predictable for you to know I can go into that bleed. I don't need to go any further. The bleed's going to be cut off, but hopefully nothing else will be cut off. I'm holding the Option key down and I'm moving that, I'm copying that over there. I could even copy it down. So if I wanted little orange squares at the edge, you get the idea for how that works. Now, because that is actually 23 millimeters, we'll look over here on the transform panel, 23 millimeters. We have 3 millimeters on the left of it and 3 millimeters on the bottom of it, or indeed the top of it, that we hope won't be printed. So as far as we're concerned, although it's reporting that to be 23 millimeters, there's only 20 millimeters of it that's going to be visible on the finished product. We've put that on the master, which means when we go to every page, we have our little box that's now part of our design. Excellent. Now, what I actually wanted was a dark page, a very, very dark page. In essence, I was designing for, I would say almost brown, but a very dark brown background. How I did that was go in here. I can use one of these, so I'm getting rid of them, but I'm going to use one of these to create my background. And I can actually do that just by pulling that out and making that the colour I wanted it to be, which was a very dark brown. So let's make that darker. Let's bring you down. And we go to dark brown. Yeah, not that kind of brown, to be honest. It was nearer black. That's not bad. It wasn't quite so chocolatey as that. Let's move across. A grey brown, like that. Almost black, but not quite. Now that made a difference whether it was almost. Black is very difficult to work with. When it's printed out, it's incredibly harsh. So I went as dark as I could go, but actually it's a brown colour, it's slightly off. And that was how I was working, and my text was going to be white. But you'll notice, let's have a look up here. This bit, I want to be my printed page. Normally your printed page is white, and it is shown as white. If I do that, I've got a danger that that's going to print out incorrectly unless the guillotine is bang on, and I mean to the nth degree of a millimetre. So my background is something I should pull out to the bleed. So you don't worry about the fact that, it's going beyond the area, like that. Then on my cover, when I put my image on the cover, do I have an image? Let's use this here, an image placeholder. That's an image placeholder. I know I'm going to want a full image on that page. And when it was set for digital, it looked like that. Like that. But I've got the same issue with that image as I would have with the colour of the background. Make sure it goes out to the bleed. And that way, if there is a slight issue with the printer, it will still print correctly. Couple of other issues, which I'm going to show you in a different file. That's setting it up from scratch. You are now ready to go with that. There are still a few issues, but it would make more sense for me to show you those outstanding issues in a file with some proper content. So hold on to that thought there. And I'm going to open up my demo file. So my demo starting point, which is in here. So let that load in. This is the final file that I did. So you can see the colour. Basically it's the background, isn't it? It's identical to the Affinity Publisher background. But this is the finished product. Well, actually, no, this is as far as I got with it when it was going to be digital, when it was going to be a PDF. In fact, it looks fabby as a PDF. File export, PDF, and that looks fine. I want to choose all my pages, all 8 of them, and I want to preview it. So let's just export that and have a look at it. We will stick it on the desktop. We will stick it on the desktop and save it there. And it should open, there we go, in a PDF Expert. That was my finished product. If this was being sent out to people who have bought tickets for this event, great. There's the programme. You can get up to speed before we go. Gala dinner. Menu. Very nice. And some little stories about what the Manchester Community Memorial Foundation have been up to in the last year to raise funds. And a sign-off page at the end. And indeed, that's grand if it's a PDF. If I sent that off for printing, we'd have problems. It's the wrong colour space. It has no bleed on it whatsoever. It's got no printer's marks, crop marks, instructions, page numbers on it, nor anything else either. Could they print it? Yes. Would it look right? Very, very doubtful. I think the biggest thing that would cause the problems, the lack of a bleed and the fact that they would not then be able to get that to the edge. They can't estimate what should be on the edge. You could say, well, they can just take 3mm off what's there. And indeed, they could, because if you look at the design, there is nothing in 3mm at the edge that would cause a problem. But that's only because I've designed it that way. If it was anything else and there was something in there, it could cause a problem. So that's what it looks like for digital. This was the point. It was, do you know what? Let's not do this digital. Let's print it out. At which point, what did I look like, Mike?
What did you look like?
I do wish you could have told me that at the beginning and I would have designed it totally different. Thank you for that. But it's all doable. So let's come out of there and say, at this stage with this file, I thought I was done. But no, they've changed their mind and now it needs to be printed out. How do I go about converting an existing file to prepare it for print? Okay, well, we know we have a document set up. There's the document set up. Same dialog box as we started with a few fractional differences. You'll note the margin isn't there, but that's because the margin is not part of the entire document. The margin is part of the spreads, the pages we have. But yes, we can go in here and make sure that everything is okay for print. Don't really need to make any changes to the units, the DPI, and whether they're embedded or not. Even in terms of the layout, all of that is fine. The first thing I'm going to need to think about is the colour is bound to be off because the colour format for screen display tends to be RGB. So I need to go into that and make sure that it's set to CMYK. Now, if you look at the image at the background with the scarf, that may shift in colour fractionally. It usually goes a little bit darker when we come out of it. I'm going to set that colour profile to generic because I do not have any information to the contrary from my printer. When I go into the bleed, this document has no bleed. And that's because I didn't want that printed out with a bleed anyway. I didn't need a bleed. It was for digital production. Now it's not. I'm assured by my print service that they need a 3mm bleed. You'll notice that the lock's on, so put the 3mm in. As soon as you move out of that box, it bounces the 3mm through all of them. That's as far as you can take it in there. That's the changes that you've made in there. Boom, you see instantly around the edges, there's the bleed. Problem with that? Slightly, because there's nothing in that bleed area. So right now, although you've got a bleed, that's not the end of the story. You need to put some content in that bleed that you are prepared to lose. Content that's just there in case the printer's having an off day. So the first thing I would need to do in here is this is an image. If I toggle that on and off, over here you can see that's an image. That image needs to go into the background like that. You'll also see there, so I'm stretching it up. Let's stretch it sideways, make sure it's actually touching the edge of the bleed. And you'll see the problem, hopefully. Yes, that doesn't look quite right, does it? The edges are a different colour. Now, what's happening here? Well, what is happening here is that the master has a dark background. This page has an image on it. There, that's my image. And look at that. It looks like there's something over the top of it. There isn't something over the top of it. The eagle-eyed amongst you will have seen that the opacity of this image is set to 70%. If I set that up to 100, full image. So what's going on up here? Right, well, let's take that back down to 70% and show you what's going on here. It's interacting in there. Let's get that back in the right place. So it's in the bleed. It's interacting with the background, which is a brilliant indication to me that I need not to forget, do not on pain of death forget, not on a per page basis, but I'll show you, there's the bleed all the way around all of them. Because I'm working with a dark background, it would be easy to forget that I haven't extended the background into the bleed. To do that, I need to go into my master page, and you can see this is my background. And it is not going into the bleed. So I need to fix that for a start. Very simple to do, you just got to remember to do it. For every master that you may have that on. So in here, there's my background. Let's take it up to that top corner. You can see the red line and the green line, meaning you're in bang on the right spot, and then extend it outwards. So all of the masters have been updated. That means when I go in here and I look in there, although it doesn't look very different to you, you can see that this bit is the same colour as the page rather than being like the background. Great, we're getting somewhere. So we know the colour space is correct, the size is correct, we've put the bleed on it, that's correct, the margins are right. Now at this point, I got told, because it's white text on a black background, it needs to be a spot colour. How happy was I at that stage, Mike?
Not happy.
Not happy at all. No. Like, I've already done all that. What are you talking about? Plus the fact, spot colour. Yeah. How am I going to set that up in Affinity? Interesting. Because it needs to travel with the file as information for the print services printer to interpret. And I sat and I looked. And the instructions that the print service has emblazoned across their website was fantastic for InDesign and Quark and Illustrator. Everything basically apart from Affinity. And that's the problem as Affinity users we've got right now. There are the uninitiated out there who are unaware of how fabulous Affinity is. Never fear, it can be done. You just need to know how to do it. And it's not particularly obvious. Right, let's just concentrate on this header here. I won't reformat the whole lot in whatever. But the instructions they actually gave us, which they changed their mind about, but that's a whole different story, was if you make the spot colour an entirely different colour to white, and then name it white, the printer will interpret it correctly. Well, I looked at Mike and he looked at me and we thought, okay, sounds dodgy, but never mind. To be able to create a spot colour, this is the best way to do it. You have in here lots of different colour options. Now, if you're watching and you're on Windows, you won't see the middle colour options here that have the little Apple logo on them, because that's our Mac system palettes, which Windows doesn't have. This allows us, as you see here, assets for the Blue Yeti, Scrivener, Blue Yeti course, Notion demo, crayons. These are colour palettes that I have created at macOS system level to share across applications. Windows has no concept of that. It would be great if they added it. Affinity supports it, and it doesn't cause any harm transferring files. You just won't have access to these palettes. There is another type of palette which is not shown here. So these are your Pantone colours at the bottom, your Mac system palettes in the middle, your application palettes at the top that belong to Affinity Publisher, but there's another kind of palette that is not there, and that is a document palette. If you go up to the little burger menu, you can see you can add an application palette, a document palette, or a system palette from here. And it was it was a document palette that I needed to create. It calls that unnamed, which I don't find helpful at all. The first thing I do is to go in and rename it document. If you have more than one document palette, I would put doc at the beginning and then you know what they are. So I've created a document palette there. My next job was to find the text that needed to be not look white even though it was white. The instructions were crazy. And I picked a lurid pink colour like that. The next thing I did was add it into here, and that says global colour. It also has, and it's incredibly tiny. Can I see that? Let me have a look. There is a triangle, lower left, and a dot in the lower right. The triangle is indicating it's a global colour. Now, why that's important is this. I have text here and I have text here, and they're independently coloured of each other. So let's apply that global colour to both of them. And then go into the global colour and change it. Both change automatically without me reapplying anything. So that's what a global colour does and why it's important. I'm going to undo that because we need it the pink colour. You're wondering why pink. So was I. Basically anything other than white, I have no idea because I want it printed white, but that's what I was told, so that was what I did. Right, you can't send that off saying global colour 1 because the printer will not know what that is. So the next step was to rename the spot colour. So this is a spot colour, but it needed to be renamed. Now it's saying new name for white. This is because I've already done it once, but that was what you needed to do with it. In fact, it's not. Why are you not? Rename spot. Yes, come on. White. White. Let me change that back. You're going to go. You're not. Oh, Mike, we've broken it. Oh.
You mean you've broken it?
Yeah, okay, I've broken it. That should just rename to white. I have no idea why it's not. Tell you what, we'll just call it white 2 and be done if it won't call it white 2. Fair enough. It's not renaming it full stop. No idea why. But it did. It did when I was doing it for real. And that colour then gets sent with the document when you create your print-ready PDF. So if you're told you need spot colours, that's how to do it in Affinity Publisher, or it is according to the instructions that my print service needed. Your mileage may vary. If you are in any doubt, ask them what they need and ask them to be very specific. Tell them to give you the instructions in generic terms, not to automatically assume you are in InDesign. But that is what I was told needed to be done. I was then told that was not needed to be done. Such is my life. So I had to go in and then delete that because I then didn't need it. So delete it. And I went back into my text and I turned it back to white. So I just made it white and everything was all fine and dandy again. So again, colour space has been corrected, bleeds been added, margins were okay, we created a spot colour, then we're told we didn't need it. Last step, we've got to get this output to a print-ready PDF that their print equipment can interpret correctly and produce the most fabulous final output. Right, there's nothing else to be done here in the interface per se. You now need to get your document to the stage it is ready to print or ready to export. Go to File and Export. Now that's a really easy shortcut key to remember. It's Command Option Shift and S. And the beauty of that shortcut is it's exactly the same as a lot of the Adobe apps. So if you're coming to this from Adobe apps, that generally gives you the export options in there. So it's a good one to remember. You have all of these export options across the top, but the one we're interested in is PDF. And what we want is a PDF that's ready for print, but not just generic print. Because at this stage, if I exported that, it would create me a PDF. So let's actually do that. And let's have a look. All pages. Now you should notice there's one change from what we saw earlier. And that is there. It says include bleed. That option was enabled before, but we didn't have a bleed. So when I say enabled, there was a tick in it, but you couldn't take the tick out. Now you can take the tick out because you do actually have a bleed. But let's say that you missed that. You just went into here and do what you always do. Just making a PDF and you're just going to hit export on it. And I'll put there, it is a demo starting point. We are sticking it on the desktop, but this time it's what shall we call it? We'll just put 001. This one is the basic one. It's not the print ready one. Let's have a look what we get with that. We're almost there, not quite. Right, what we have got there It looks very similar to what we had, but it's not identical. And what isn't identical, let's zoom in. Let's keep going. We have a line here. That line is the bleed. So in terms of interpreting that as, we've got another line over there, as a PDF, not the best because we've got the bleed showing on it. And it will get worse than that. But it can be done. You can have multiple printouts of this, multiple exports to PDF, and each one serve a different purpose. So let's come out of there. Now, this has got to go ready for print, and there is not enough information on that for the printer. So back to File Export, which I use the shortcut, but just to show you what I'm actually doing, I'm going to File and Export. You may say to me, but Elaine, that's it. There's no other options. All I can do is choose the pages. It's neatly hidden away under the More option at the bottom. If you're sending to print, you have got to get down and dirty in there. This is where it's all hidden. This is where the magic happens. Right, in here. It's starting off with a preset that it says is PDF for print. Obviously, file format's going to be PDF. It wants to know what to do, what to rasterize, and it's set to rasterize unsupported properties. What that means is things like drop shadow and stuff, which is a whole other nightmare. But basically, if it doesn't understand it, if it's not supported, rasterize it, which means convert a vector to pixels and just print that. Then we've got downsample the images. Well, if you remember, way back when we started this, hours ago, seems like hours ago, I said that my print service wanted 300 dpi. So one thing to do in there is go to 300 dpi, which you can do with a slider or type it in. Right, your print service may tell you what resampling they want, otherwise I left mine to bilinear and left it alone. You can in here choose to use the document resolution, which just happens to be 300 dpi, or you can force it to be 300 dpi. That's great if you're sending it, if you're trying to create two different outputs. You want one maybe 600 or 450, but this particular one is going to your print service and it needs to be 300, in which case you would choose not to use the document resolution. You would manually specify the dpi. Then you choose whether to allow JPEG compression. I'm not having that. We're taking that off. I want the JPEGs that I've put in there to be the best quality they possibly can. I am not concerned about the size of the file. It's being uploaded to a print service rather than sent in an email. Then you've got some, I guess, fairly technical compatibility issues. You have different, not all PDFs are equal, but most of the time if you go for the latest version, so 1.7, you'll be fine. The difference between all these versions is 1.7 supports more things than 1.6, which in turn supports more than 1.5. These PDFX options are international standards, so unless you're told otherwise, go for the latest version of PDF for Acrobat and then whatever the number is. You can at this point specify a different colour space if you want, but we've already done that. But you can in here choose CMYK if you've not converted from RGB. You could do that. You've also got the profile, and the profile is where I selected generic, but if you needed it something different, you've got two options. You could do that globally or do it in this export. Then you've got the option to embed the profiles. Well, that's critical that you do that because it's going to send it inside your PDF, which in turn you're going to send to your printer. Right, then we've got convert the image colour spaces. Well, if I've got anything in there that's wrong, please do convert it as per instructions. Otherwise, it's going to print wrong. You've got on a spot colour in case you have any spot colours, although I was told for mine, yes, you need them, then no, you don't need them. You've then got an option for overprint black, which basically prints out black as your eye would perceive it, rather than CMYK black, which tends not to be very dark. It is black, but it's not a jet black. It's not what an RGB black would be. So you have to think about how you want your black, whether you want it overprint black or not. You can choose to include your hyperlinks. Now that's going to depend, because if it's going for print, unless they've invented some magic paper, not really much point. I elected to take that out in case there was any underlines, and I did not want it underlined in a printed document. Do you want layers included? Well, I did want my layers included, and obviously I need the bleed included because that was critical. The next thing to think about is what printer's marks you need. Printer's marks do include crop marks, but there's a lot more besides. Well, mine was going to my printer, so the first time I did it, I included the lot. It doesn't matter, because unless they tell you specifically otherwise, none of that's going to be printed anyway. Reading the small print from my print service, all they said they needed was crop marks. So I could actually quite happily turn off all of that information. But it really doesn't matter. And including them, colour bars and registration marks, less important to me than page information, which included the page number. It also included the job title. So I'm going to leave all of those on and assume the print service wants them all, so you get to actually see this. Another critical thing is to embed your fonts. Now you can choose a couple of ways of doing it. You can embed the actual font. You can convert the text to curves, which means it will definitely print out okay. You can choose to only embed uncommon fonts, which means it won't embed Times New Roman or Arial, because who hasn't got those? You probably realise, Mike, that probably includes Comic Sans. Not that that was appropriate for this document. Or you can choose not to embed any fonts at all. Up to you completely. I decided all fonts. That was my instruction. And then you can choose to subset the fonts and include just what you've used. That will keep the file a little bit smaller. At that stage, I decided I had created the perfect output for my print service. This is a very good time to save this as a preset, because if you don't, and you save the file, close it down, come back 2 days later, all of that's gone. You would have to go through all of that again, and it's very difficult to get it accurate. You'll forget one thing, and then you'll make 9 copies and think that's not right. And you may even not remember. It's giving you more work. So do you know what? Just save a preset. There is a Manage Presets option at the bottom. Now, be warned, this is a little flaky at the moment. It works, but I'll explain in what way it's flaky. So at the moment, the settings I have created in here are not saved anywhere as a preset. And you can tell that because right at the top of it, it says preset and it's blank. That's because we started with a preset and I made changes. So this at the moment not saved anywhere. So it knows it needs to create a preset. And it allows me to create a preset name. So I'm going to be very imaginative and say let's say Elaine's print preset. Awesome. And OK. It adds that at the top, so it's telling me that it's saved it. If I click there, you can see all of the presets we have. There's lots of them. Right, at that point, you can close that. Now you might think, just a minute, you need to export it. Don't forget we've drilled down a layer. We're in the More dialog at the moment. So I'm going to close that. This is where it's flaky. Preset doesn't say. If I go into it, the preset I've just created, not there. Don't worry about it. It will work and it will appear later, I promise. At that point, I'm going to export it. I'm going to put this one on the desktop. And you're determined that I'm not, but I am. And over here, it was my demo starting point, but I'm going to call this Press Ready. This is the one that's going to the printer. And I did something wrong at that point. Oh, no, I didn't. Awesome. It managed that as well. Right, so let's go and zoom to the page so you can see the entire page. This time, you've got your content and you've got everything. You have the registration marks, which are the little targets over here. That helps a printer line up the content. You've got your colour blocks down here. You also have across the top the name of the file. Then you've got the time and date. We're going to have to get the wiggle on here, aren't we, Mike? Because we're live again at 9 with another show. Because it's actually the 14th, not 20th. I'm in a time warp and getting confused. Okay, so we've got that information. More registration marks down in the corners. You will also see we have crop marks. And those crop marks are marked at 3mm in from the left edge and 3mm down from the top edge. And they are the same on each corner. That is a press-ready PDF. Now, it looks fine and dandy on there, doesn't it? And you may just trust your printer. But if it's the first time you're working with a particular print service, you might be a little on the nervous side. And I think you were, weren't you, Mike?
Not at all.
Oh, lying toad. As we looked at that, it was like, do you think it'll be all right? Because what you look like you've got is 8 individual pages. And of course, we wanted it stapled at the side, A5 brochure, 8 pages. Oh, please let this come back and be all right. Now, I can officially reveal it came back, and guess what? It was all right. What I'm going to do now is move that out of here. Let's close that out of the way. Oh, let's hide all of that. And I'm going to get my webcam up, which I need to have running. Where are you, webcam? There we are. There is webcam. Right, let's get the output up and let's get my camera on the desk. Because what I am actually in the position of showing you, and at the moment you're looking at a packet of Bonjela from when I had a mouthful. So that's because the webcam's on the floor. But the webcam's about to be on the table.
Other mouth ulcer ointments may be used.
Oh yes, don't upset YouTube
No.
by mentioning anything specific. Oh, is that camera upside down? Never mind. Now don't start playing around with the focus because you play with my mind when you do that. I'll move that out of the way and I'll move that there. So that is right in front of me. Here I am. And look what we have. Oh, nice. Quite difficult to show you this. I'm going to put it down because I think you can see how shiny it is. The front cover, the inside, so what is page 2, and the back, you can see it's shiny. Look, shiny, shiny. We had it laminated. Not laminated as in very thick lamination, just enough. This is for, obviously, as you can see, it's for a gala dinner. And when that came up in the options of things you could have, Mike said, do we want these laminated? And I said, are we talking like, plastic lamination, but very, very thin? He said, yes. I said, yes, because somebody will spill the butter on it. Because that always happens at events, doesn't it? So these are now wipe cleanable as well. So if you want to use it as table mat, you could. But that is the finished thing. You can see we have staples at the side. Let's see those. What weight was the paper, Mike? Feeling it, I'm reckoning it must have been around the
290, 300, I think.
Was it? Oh, I wouldn't have thought that thick, but
not.
never mind. Right, so there's the image that we had. We had a dark background behind, and we made that 70% opacity. So that's shown up. And let's go on to the inside. So the inside, so page 2 is laminated. You'll notice page 3 not. So page 3 not as shiny, all right? But there is page 3. You'll see around the edge here, so top, bottom, left, right, there is nowhere, let's get it right close and get it to focus. Go on, you know you want to. There's nowhere around the edges here that's got any white on it. That's because the brown, it bled off into the bleed. It ran into the bleed, and even if the equipment was fractionally off, no white is showing. So let's go on to the centre pages, which are the menu and the running order for it. And there you can see the inside of the staples. Then we have the little stories on the last 2 pages. There they are. And we've got the thing on the back, which is the address, etc. And you can even look at that. You can see the webcam and the microphones and all sorts reflecting off it because it's shiny. So that's what it all looked like printed out. And I have a box of 200 of them sat next to me, ready for next week. Oh, next week, Mike. Because I'm working in the future. Been very strange. Okay, so you've seen that now. So that was the finished thing, and it did print out perfectly. So just to prove that it did actually work, nothing worse is than taking it so far and not actually being able to show you the very last bit, which is it actually printed. Okay. Anyway, back to live next week. But this has been an interesting exercise. Do we feel idiots sitting here talking to ourselves?
Not at all. I do it all the time.
That's because you're a corporate trainer and sometimes you have to train and people don't turn up.
No, I just meant I generally talk to myself.
Oh dear, there's an admission. Anyway,
nobody wants to talk to me. That's why.
To be honest, I found it weird. I miss you guys. I'm hoping by this stage in proceedings, on the 20th, when you're watching, I'd have popped into the chat. Never mind this gala dinner malarkey. I want to talk to my friends. My little MacBites community, don't you, Mike?
Yeah.
See, other people will be sitting there on Facebook, and I'll be sitting there listening to myself. People will think there's something wrong with me.
Better than talking to yourself.
Yes, that's what I'm going to say.
Yes.
Excellent. So we will be back the 27th of September. Tell me that's a Friday.
Yes.
Ah, thank you. It's a Friday. Excellent. So back to normal next week. Now, what have we got coming up on MacBites After Hours? Well, thought we'd give you a sneaky peeky, because we're good like that. For a while, we've been talking about Notion, and we love Notion. Everybody loves Notion. We love it particularly. My journal cum organisation cum productivity system, Ninja productivity system, coming along nicely. And what I'll be doing is actually showing you, once I've finessed it, I'll be showing you how I actually created it. So if you know Notion at all, you should be looking at that and thinking, oh, 4 links. I have it so my days are linked to months and months to quarters, quarters to years, and vice versa. So I can go anywhere with the click of a button from wherever I am. Not just talking you through it, but actually building it with you. Wouldn't it be nice if they all built along with us?
Yeah.
Oh, that'd be cool. So I shall demand that you do that. We'll also be looking at mastering master pages in Affinity Publisher. We touched on master pages today in the session that we did, but there's a lot more to them than that. So we'll be looking at that at some point. Also coming up to NaNoWriMo, the number one request I have for Scrivener is, how does compile work? Particularly from people coming from, I mean, if you're new to Scrivener, it's just like a black hole, an abyss of I don't know what to do. If you're coming from Scrivener version 2, it's so completely different as to be virtually a different app. In which case, you're going to need some guidance. So I will give you some guidance. Now, in the meanwhile, you can sign up to my list to get first information about these events at elainegiles.com/VIP. And you can contact us using any of those methods. Because we love to hear from people, don't we?
We do.
We do, yeah.
We do.
It's very weird sitting here thinking, where is everybody? But it's Saturday. So this is the first show we're doing today. We're now heading off to do another show before we do the live show later.
No, we're heading off for something to eat.
We haven't got time for something to eat because I've got to edit this and get it ready for upload. We haven't got time to breathe today. Trust me on that. But never mind. As I say, we will be back on the 27th. So let's find that. So you know when we'll be back. We will indeed be back with you then. So we hope you've enjoyed that. Didn't find it too weird that we're somewhere else in the chat. And it's weird. It's weird, but we will be back to normal next time, honest. But for now, it's going to be goodbye from me.
And goodbye from me.
And we will both see you next time.